Hello and welcome friends. In unit 4, that is introduction to sales management, up till now we have discussed the sales management scope, objectives, and we were in the middle of discussion on the different theories of selling. So we'll be discussing the third theory today, and let's see what this theory is. Now this particular theory was given by buying formula theory. It was given by E.K. Strong Jr. Right? And basically it says what? It says that the salesperson should help the buyer, the prospect, in the thinking process. Now you would be wondering as to what is the thinking process of the buyer. So you'll have to go back to what you have discussed in marketing management, and therein you have talked about the consumer buying behavior. So here basically we are referring to that particular behavior only, the consumer buying behavior, right? So this in slightly modified form is the consumer buying behavior. There's a particular need that the prospect is aware of, that the prospect is sensitized about. There's a particular problem that he wants to solve. For that he looks for alternatives. That is the second step, and then he also evaluates these alternatives and then decides which one to purchase, and then he purchases. And then finally, after purchasing this particular product, he feels satisfied or dissatisfied, and he spreads, if he's satisfied, he's spreading a good word of mouth, otherwise he's saying bad things about the product. So this is the satisfaction or the dissatisfaction which may happen after the purchase. So this is what the thinking process of the buyer is. Now this particular theory says that it is for the salesperson to take the buyer forward in this particular process. So the buyer would get stuck at different stages in this whole process, the 4 different stages. It is what the salesperson to push the buyer from one stage to the next, right? For example, the first stage is the buyer should feel some kind of a need. He should have some kind of a problem to which he should want some kind of a solution, right? So now the job of the salesperson is to make the buyer aware of this particular need that he has, or to create a need for the buyer. Fine. So the job of the salesperson would be to emphasize buyer needs. I'll give an example in a slightly different context. For example, you know that generally nowadays deodorants and the hair gels are very popular product. Or for example, let's take example of the cold drinks that we generally have when we go out with friends, Coca-Cola and Pepsi and whatnot, right? Please understand that these hair gels are not necessity products, but now when you go out, you feel that if you're not going with hair gel applied on your hair, or you are not wearing the deodorant or the perfume, then probably the friends would not talk to you, the people would not befriend you. And this basically leads you to think that these products, the hair gels, the deodorants, they are necessity products. You cannot survive without them. So this is one need that the marketer has created. There was no need as such for a hair gel. You can survive and you can do well without a hair gel or without a deodorant or without a nail polish, but this certain need has been now created very creatively by the marketers. So this is the job of the salesperson also. You have to either create the need, you have to make the prospective buyer think that he needs a particular product, or you have to emphasize on the existing needs. So for example, let's say you are selling an AC. We'll continue with the same example that we used in the last session. Supposing you are selling an AC. So now you have to make the buyer, and let's say you are selling this AC in Pithoragarh region, which is a hilly region, Pithoragarh district. So you are selling this AC, and now the prospect says that he does not need the product. So you have to make him think that he needs this product. You have to create this need for him. So you will tell him कि नहीं सर, अब तो climate वार्म होता जा रहा है, ग्लोबल वार्मिंग बढ़ रही है, अब तो सर एसी की रिक्वायरमेंट होगी। साथ ही साथ इससे आपका हवा वगैरह भी थोड़ा ह्यूमिडिटी लेवल वगैरह मेंटेन रहता है, तो धूल वगैरह भी कम रहती है, तो एसी तो सर आप लगाइए. So you are creating this need, right? And if he already feels that he has this need, then you have to emphasize it. Let's say he says, okay, no, I need an AC, but right now I want to purchase the refrigerator first. So emphasize on this need. नहीं सर AC ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है सर, मेहमान वगैरह आते हैं तो अच्छा इंप्रेशन बनता है. So this is how you are emphasizing the buyer need, right? And once you emphasize the buyer need, what will happen? The buyer will be aware of his need. He will recognize the problem that he has. The problem is that he does not have an AC and he should be buying an AC. So this is what will happen. And now if the buyer gets stuck on this stage, what will you do? You will push him to this particular stage. How do you do that? You tell the buyer about your product, your service or your trademark, and you tell him that these products or services can satisfy his need. So what has happened in our example? Now he feels that he needs an AC, but then you tell him, sir AC भी खरीदिए तो आप Voltas खरीदिए, क्योंकि सर ये is much better than the other products in the market, right? So now you are making him aware of all the solutions which are there, and that your solution, your company's product is the best solution for him. So make him aware of this, right? And in case there is a lot of competition, there are so many companies which are selling ACs apart from Voltas, then what will you do? You will talk about the adequacy and likability, that your product will be able to satisfy its requirements, and that your product is likable, is much liked than the other rival products in the market. So once you do this, you are basically helping the prospective buyer in this particular stage. You are helping him search for solutions, right? Then you will push him towards purchase. So he has now become aware of his requirements, of his needs. Then he has now already been made aware of what all solutions does he have, and that your company's product is the best solution for him. Now you have to make him purchase the product. So you have to nudge him to the next stage, because if he gets stuck there, then ultimately it is of no value to you, because the product is not getting sold. He is now aware of his needs, that he needs an AC, and he now knows what all products, what all brands are selling ACs, and that Voltas is the best brand. But then if he does not purchase, no use. So you have to now nudge him to this third stage of purchase. And how do you do this? Facilitate purchase. We have given some examples of how you can facilitate purchase. If you remember in the last slide that we discussed, let me go back a little bit. So how do you facilitate the purchase? Have a look at this. Right, you ask for order, you offer help in writing the order. So now this is how you facilitate the purchase. Is that making sense? So this is how you'll facilitate the purchase for him. Now this will make him purchase your product. So this is how you are facilitating the purchase. I can give you another example of how you can facilitate the purchase. You can arrange credit for him. So let's say if you are selling AC and he says, no, bhai, it is 30,000. I do not have that kind of money because I have to invest in so many things. So what you can do is, sir, we'll arrange low cost financing for you. Sir, केवल 2% interest पे आपको मैं 6 महीने का कर्जा दिलवा देता हूँ फलाना बैंक से. So this is how you are facilitating the purchase. And once you do this, then the buyer would buy your product, then the prospect would buy your product, right? And then he may feel satisfied or dissatisfied, right? And you can even facilitate this particular stage also by reassuring him once he has bought the product, by going to him again, calling him up on telephone or making a personal visit, and then asking him about how the product is performing, or whether he is satisfied or not, or whether he is facing some problems or not. So you can also ensure that the buyer is satisfied also. So this is what you have to do. So as a salesperson, you have to nudge the customers from first stage to the fourth stage. If he is not aware of his needs, then make him aware of his needs. If he is aware, but then he does not know of all the solutions which can satisfy his requirements, then make him aware of all the solutions, and also make him aware of the fact that your product is the best product in the market, your brand is the best brand. And if he has already searched for the different solutions for his problems, for his needs, then facilitate purchase, and ultimately this would lead to satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Fine. So this is how you actually go about as far as this particular theory is concerned. Now just one last thing, you might be wondering as to what do we mean by trademark. So you are a seller of, let's say, an AC. AC is a product. You are a seller of education service. Education service is a service. Or you, let's say, are a seller of some kind of medical emergency services, then it becomes service. But what do we mean by trademark? Trademark is basically your brand. So it may so happen that the buyer wants to buy an AC, but he is not sure as to which particular brand does he buy. Would he buy? Should he buy? Should he buy an AC from Voltas? Should he buy an LG AC? Should he buy a Sony AC? Which kind of AC should he buy? So now here the task for you is to make him aware of your trademark, your brand, and to convince him that yes, your trademark or your brand is the best in the market. Fine. So this is what we mean by the trademark. So you just don't make him aware of the existence of AC, which is a product, but you also make him aware of Voltas AC. Voltas is a trademark. Fine. Now we are moving on to the next theory, which is known as the theory of behavioral equation. Behavioral equation theory. Now let's have a look at this behavioral equation theory. We'll have a look at the behavioral equation, and this was given by Harvard, and the buyer response basically as far as this equation is concerned is P into D into I into R. Right? We'll understand as to what do we mean by P, D, I, R. Buyer response is whether he buys or not, whether he purchases your product or not, whether he places an order or not. This is what we mean by the buyer response, and it is basically P into D into I into R. We'll talk about what P, D, I, R are, but before that we should understand what do we mean by this cross sign. This cross sign basically denotes multiplication. And what happens in multiplication? Let's say R is equal to 0. Don't you think buyer response would also be equal to 0? Anything multiplied by 0 is always a 0. So the buyer response would be 0. If I is 0, again the buyer response is 0. Even if one of these elements is 0, the buyer response would be 0. Had this been, instead of a multiplication sign, it had been a plus sign, then probably if only one particular aspect is 0, the total would not have been 0. But here, even if one of these aspects is missing, P, D, I, R, even if just one is missing, one is 0, then the whole buyer response would be 0, right? Then let's talk about what about these terms which have been used here, which these notations. So P means predisposition. Predisposition is your force of habit. So if you have been buying a particular thing and you have bought this particular thing a number of times, that is what we mean by predisposition, force of habit. There are chances that you would again buy that particular thing. So for example, if you have always been buying the Dabur Lal Dant Manjan, so in the next instance also you are more likely to buy the Dabur Lal Dant Manjan. This would be known as predisposition or the force of habit, because you were in the habit of buying the particular Dant Manjan, right? Let's talk about the drive level. D means drive level. Now what is drive? Something that fuels some action on the part of buyer is the drive, right? For example, when you are very tired, you feel like sleeping, you go to the bed, right? So this is some kind of a drive, because this is making you go to bed. This is making you go to bed and relax. So this is making you indulge into some action. Likewise, something that makes the customer indulge into particular action is basically the drive, right? Now the drives can basically be of two types. Innate are which are present in you right from your birth. For example, hunger, thirst and pain. Have you seen a young child, maybe just 1.5 months old or maybe just 2 days old? He feels hungry, and when he feels hungry, what does he do? He cries or she cries. So this is an innate drive. So the action of crying is fueled by this particular drive, hunger drive. Again, if he's 6-7 months old and he's feeling thirsty, then again he'll start crying or he'll start asking for water. Now this is the thirst drive. If you slap this particular child, 1.5 months old, very hard, what would he do? He would try to alert his mother by weeping. Now he is actually indulging in this particular action because of this pain drive. The drive is to get rid of pain, and here the drive is to fulfill, satisfy the hunger and the thirst. So these are innate drives which they are present in you right from your childhood. They are not learned. But then what are learned drives? Status and recognition. What do we mean by this? Does a child worry about status? A 1-month-old child, or maybe 2 years, 5 years old child worries about status? No. But a grown-up worries about status. A grown-up worries about recognition. These are learned drives because we learn. They're not present in us. So if somebody tells us you would be given the award of best student of the year, then we'll feel that okay, we'll get this recognition. So that is a drive for us and we'll feel motivated by it. But if you tell a 2-year child that you will get the best child award, would he feel motivated? He would not, because this drive was not present from him right from his childhood. This is one drive that human beings tend to learn over a period of time as they grow old. So as that particular child grows old, maybe 10 years, 12 years, then he starts learning about what status is and recognition, and then he starts seeking these things. Then it becomes drive. So these are learned drives, right? So for a young child, his status has no meaning. Yes, but for him, hunger and thirst are really, really important. So these drives, hunger and thirst, are innate drives present right from the birth, and the learned drives are status and recognition. I'll give an example. The example is, for example, why do you purchase a Titan watch? You do not need a watch anymore. You have your mobile phones. You purchase this because when you are wearing a Titan watch and everybody sees it, then it actually conveys your status to the onlookers, to the observers, and that is a drive in you. But if you go to a 3-year-old child, he would never want to buy this kind of a watch. He would probably be happier if he is given a chocolate because that satisfies his hunger drive. Is that making sense? Okay. Now we are moving on to I. What do we mean by I? I means intensity of cues. How intense the cues are. Right? So how intense the cues are, that will also determine the buyer response. We have seen how drive determines buyer response. If you are hungry, you are more likely to buy samosa. This is buyer response, buying the samosa. But if you are thirsty, you are more likely to buy lassi, or to have cold milk or cold coffee or water. Now this is the buyer response. So buyer response depends on the drive. But now what we are discussing is buyer response also depends on the intensity of cues. Now what do we mean by intensity of cues? Cues basically are those things which actually signal to the buyer that he has to do something, that he has to indulge in purchase action. So these are basically cues, and they are triggering cues and non-triggering cues. Triggering cues are, they activate decision making by buyer and they take him to the buying point. And non-triggering cues are, they influence the buyer decision, help in selecting the different brands, help in selecting a particular brand out of different brands available in the market, right? So let us talk about the triggering cues. For example, you see a particular picture while you are very tired after the classes. You see a particular picture, a hoarding on the roadside, and there you see a nicely packaged burger. So now this can be a triggering cue, because now you feel that this triggers decision making in you, and you feel like, okay, I need to have something. I'm feeling a little tired and I am feeling a little hungry. I need to have something. So that is a triggering cue. But when you go to the shop, you find samosas, you find burgers, you find aloo tikkis and so many other products. Then you have to take a call whether you are going to have burger or to have samosa. Now this basically will depend on the packaging of the samosas and the burgers. If you find the packaging of samosas more attractive, probably you are going to have the samosa. So basically here, this packaging is basically a non-triggering cue, because it has not made you buy the product. It has made you select a particular product out of a number of products available. So burger was there, samosa was also there, and you picked up samosa because it was nicely packaged. The branding and the display on the package was very nice, so you purchased it. I'll give another example. You see an ad and then you decide, okay, I'll need to buy a chocolate. And when you go to the shop, there you decide, okay, which chocolate should I buy now? If you look at the packaging and then decide, this is a non-triggering cue. If you look at the price and then decide, this is a non-triggering cue, because it has helped you pick up a particular brand out of different brands available in the market. So you purchase either a Cadbury's, or you purchase either a 5-star, or you purchase maybe the Kit Kat. So that you are deciding based on whether the discounts are available or not, what are the sales promotion campaigns, based on that you decide. So that is a non-triggering cue, right? So what are different types of non-triggering cue? I've talked about product cues, size and color. So when you go to the market, you are feeling hungry, you saw a particular poster, so that was the triggering cue. But then you go to a particular shop and you find that the burger has also been kept in samosa, but a samosa is a huge one and the burger comparatively a small one. Probably this would help you decide that you will have samosa. Now this will help you in making this decision as to which particular product or brand to buy. So this becomes a non-triggering cue, right? Or maybe when you go to a particular, you have, let's say you come across, there is Diwali and you want to buy a shirt. So you go to the market and therein you have to decide which particular shirt to buy. And based on the color of the shirt, you decide that, okay, I'm going to buy this one. This looks great. Now this is a non-triggering cue because this has helped you make a decision as to which one to buy. Triggering cues make you decide that you have to buy. खरीदना है, triggering cues will decide. कौन सा खरीदना है? Non-triggering cues, right? So non-triggering cues, one more example, information. So you look at the ads, word of mouth, some relative, some friend of yours tells you, okay, this one is a good product, then you go and buy it. So these are again non-triggering cues. Fine. So let's say you join a company, you join a corporate organization after completing your BBA, and just before you are about to join, you come to know that you have to wear formals in the office. So just before you are joining, you decide that you have to buy formal wear. Now this is a triggering cue. Your joining letter was probably a triggering cue here. But what was a non-triggering cue? When you go to the market, then you decide, okay, I'll buy this particular shirt, this particular trousers, and you decide this based on the color scheme of the shirt or the trouser. Now this is a non-triggering cue, right? Now let's talk about the reinforcement, R. Again, reinforcement is what has happened with you when you bought that particular product in the last instance, last time when you bought it. What happened? Were you happy? Were you satisfied? And were you dissatisfied? Right? And if you are satisfied in the last instance, when you bought the product last, then you are more likely to buy it again. So this would strengthen your tendency to purchase the product again. Is this okay? So greater is the reinforcement level, greater is the satisfaction level, more wonderful is the experience with that particular product in the last instance, you are more likely to buy that particular product again. So this is what the behavioral equation theory says. This is what the behavioral equation is all about. The buyer responses depend on all these 4 factors, and even if one is absent, let's say P, D and I, we have very high values, but R is missing, R is 0, then the buyer response would be 0. So your response depends on which particular product do you buy, depends on what was your habit, what are your drive levels, what is the intensity of cues, and what is the reinforcement, what was your experience last time. Let me give an example. Are you going to pursue MBA from this very college or not will depend on, number 1, are you in the habit of paying the fees every year and renewing your admission? So if you are in the habit, you are more likely to pay the fees for MBA also and renew your admission. You really feel that you need some recognition in the society, drive level. If you feel that yes, you need some recognition, you need to be a PG, then there are greater chances that you would do MBA from here. What is the intensity of cues? Are the classrooms really neat and clean? Are the teachers really knowledgeable? Are the job prospects after doing MBA from this particular college? They are very good because the placement team is very hardworking. These are all cues, and the more intense these cues are, the more likely you are to do your MBA from this very college. And what was your experience? Reinforcement would mean what was your experience in last instance when you did your BBA from here. If you are satisfied, you are more likely to do your MBA also from here, right? So I hope I was able to make this equation clear to you. So thank you very much for your time. Now that we have wrapped up the various theories of selling, we have discussed 4 theories. We will basically be moving over to the sales process in the next session. Thank you very much for your time.